So thank you for coming today. And today is this forgiveness and justice. The balance of this is in London. I have taken a 3-part seminar on this. So I'll try not to condense all the 3 parts in one session today. But I'll give an introduction to each of the parts and
You can go till 8:30.
Thank you. So the first is the philosophical dimension of this tension between forgiveness and justice. Then I'll talk about the sociological. That means when we live in society, how does it work? And then finally I talk about the Bhakti dimension. That what does it mean when we're trying to look at the balance between Bhakti and say Dharma, which involves justice or forgiveness, whatever it is. So as many of you know, last 10 years I have been going to the West, and there is a striking disconnect between when new people or Western people, westernized new people, it could be in India also, when they come to spirituality and what they find in scripture. So what do I mean by that? Most people come to spirituality expecting to become more peaceful, more understanding, more forgiving of oneself, forgiving of others. And if they come to our tradition, all the sacred books are filled with wars. Isn't it? Isn't it? So a war is like the ultimate expression of unforgiveness. Isn't it? And this is not just our tradition. Every sacred tradition, if you see the Bible, the Old Testament is filled with wars, and the Quran, it's filled with wars. So Quran probably more than other religions, but the point is that wars are there, and quite often there is a celebration of violence. Like say Arjuna is fighting and killing. Okay, what am I doing wrong today with respect to the sound system? I don't need this. Okay. So there is an Arjuna shoots and kills. Oh, there is a river of blood over there. So it seems very jarring. So is spirituality meant to encourage us to become more forgiving? Yes, of course it is. And forgiveness is important. So how do we look at this? So I'll start from a philosophical perspective. See, at a basic level, our human life is a journey of the past and the future. And in every human being's life, there is always a distance between action and aspiration. Aspiration means how I would like to be. And action is how I actually end up doing. So I would like to be gentle and polite and helpful. And sometimes I end up being selfish and critical, maybe even manipulative. So there is always this tension. And now, when we act in life, see, for us, the past is unchangeable. The past is what it is. And we all have made mistakes in the past. We have done things which we knew were wrong. Or we have done things which later turned out to be wrong. And now when we act, in the future, there's uncertainty about the future also. So we could say with respect to the past, there is irreversibility. Irreversibility means that what has happened in the past, it cannot be changed. With respect to the future, there is unpredictability. None of us knows what will happen in the future. So this is a slightly philosophical point, but it's an important psychological and relational point to understand that the past is irreversible. And say if we had made some mistake 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and we were labeled permanently for that mistake, then we would never be able to grow in life. It's like one past action, if it would label a person forever, then there will be no potential for growth. But we made a mistake and we already made the mistake. So what happens is, if there is no forgiveness has to be there for the past. Otherwise, there is no chance to go ahead in the future. That all of us have committed mistakes. I've done this mistakes with somebody else has done mistakes with me. And in the afternoon today, I took the class on this verse. Sometimes I feel that most devotees, this is probably the verse which will be the most valuable for all of us as devotees. So let's recite this verse. The simple verse. What Krishna is saying is, Yasman no dvijate loko. That one who is not disturbed by others, and lokan no dvijate chaya. One who does not disturb others and one who is not disturbed by others. And what are the typical disturbances is? Harsha marsha bhayo dvegair. That when somebody listens to us, does what we tell them to do, we feel jubilant, harsha. The other person doesn't listen to us, amarsha. And if you're not sure what the other person is going to do, then there is bhaya. And overall, if that relationship starts going south, there's udvega, there's rejection. So, mukto yaha, one who is free from all this emotional drama and trauma, yaha sachame priyaha. Such a person is dear to me. So let's recite this verse once together. Yasman no dvijate loko, lokan no dvijate chaya, harsha marsha bhayo dvegair, mukto ya sachame priyaha. So what is Krishna saying? Thank you. So what is Krishna saying? That in many ways, if we consider the journey of life, so two people could be in any kind of relationship. It could be husband, wife. It could be two siblings. It could be two colleagues. It could be two neighbors. So what happens is, I am going to disturb you. That's just the way life is. I'll do something that will disturb you. Maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally. You will do something which will disturb me. And I disturb you. You disturb me. And together, we create a disturbed world. So, now, what Krishna is saying is, go against this. Don't disturb others and don't be disturbed by others. So now the thing is, how can we do that? Say, you did something which disturbed me. And now, if I hold it against you for the rest of my life, and because you disturbed me at that time, so I keep disturbing you again and again and again. And then conversely, that I did something to disturb you.
Disturbing so much.
Okay. I think last time I told all of you about Tugra Karma. No? There's Ugra Karma and Tugra Karma. Tugra Karma is technology utpanna Ugra Karma. So, wherever I go. So wherever I go, some gadget always goes wrong. Sometimes it's my laptop, sometimes it's my pen, sometimes it's my recording device, sometimes it's the mic. So I was telling this in a class. There's a Prabhupada disciple in America. He is very humorous. He was, before coming to Bhakti, he was a comedian. So then I told him, Prabhu, can you teach me humor? So he said, yes, but you will have to pay a heavy price. I said, what is the price? He says, all my humor will be at your expense. So whenever I go, one time he attended my class, and after my class, he asked. He came and we were taking prasad together. So I asked him, how was the class? He said, I have heard many great classes. This was not one of them. So when I in the class, I was telling him about this Tugra Karma. I said, so he said that wherever I go, something technological goes wrong always. So he said, if you go at one place and a fire starts, that's an accident. But if somebody, wherever they go, a fire starts, then it is they who are starting the fire. So So now what happens is that in life, if I have disturbed you for some reason and I have hurt you in some way, now if you take that as a reason to keep hurting me, then it's like you imprison me in the version of me that was there 10 years ago. Maybe I have grown, I have become a better person. So if we don't forgive, then what happens is the other person will always stay either defensive or aggressive, trying to defend themselves from when we are accusing them or we are hurting them back, or they become aggressive and hit us back. So, and conversely, it happens to us also. That I was like that at that time, but I have changed now. So that we human beings can change. So that is so important. We all have this hope that we can become better. We all want to become better. And so the unforgiveness, what it does is, it wastes our energy in simply being defensive or aggressive, while that energy could be better used for transformation, to actually become a better person. So we all have limited energy. So we all have some amount of energy. Here I'm talking about, you could say, inner energy. Now either we can use it for defending or attacking. Defending means somebody is hurting me and I try to protect myself from the hurt, or you hurt me, I hurt you back. So either we can use this energy for defending or attacking, which is eventually a lot of wasted energy, or we can use that energy for improving, for becoming better. So now certainly we would like to become better. We want other people around us to become better. So forgiveness in that sense frees our emotional energy so that we can become better. And when we forgive others, that they are freed so that they can become better. So what has happened is, the past is irreversible. Whatever somebody has done, they can't change that, we can't change that. So in that sense, so that people are not locked in the past versions of who they were. So forgiveness is important. But at the same time, forgiveness alone is not enough. See what happens, I said over here, there's a distance between this action and aspiration. This is an essential human tension, that who I want to be and who I am. The tension between this. So now, we all want to move in the direction of aspiration. I want to become a better person. So on the other side, because the future is unpredictable, there has to be some kind of promise. A promise that I will become a better person. A promise that I will act in this way. Attempt, a promise or a commitment to try to move towards the aspiration. Yeah, maybe I was short-tempered at that time, and I was very selfish. I was thoughtless. I want to become a better person. So now, to some extent, the future is like an ocean of uncertainty. Nobody knows what is going to happen. But the promises we make and the promises we keep, they create some at least small islands of certainty in the ocean of uncertainty that is the future. Say for example, when a husband and woman get married, or a husband and wife get married, a man and woman get married. So they are making a commitment over there, that through thick and thin, we will be there with each other. So now we don't know what the future is going to bring, but that we will be there for each other, that creates one island of certainty. Now none of us can have any absolute certainty, but some island of certainty is required. Otherwise life will be totally chaotic. So for example, all of you come and sit here for the class. Now everybody who's come for the class has voluntarily come and they are interested in the class. So when you come, we come and sit over here. When I come to speak, you come to here. Then at that time, there is a certain implicit promise that I will speak something worthwhile and you will pay attention. So now suddenly, if right in the middle of the class, the person sitting next to you turns to you and punches you in the face. See what's going on. If one time it happens, people will be worried about coming to the temple again. So, this kind of people also come to the temple. So what happens is that the future is unpredictable, but it is our attempt to move. So again, aspiration and action. So now action is, sometimes our action is something which is wrong. And we have done something wrong, so we need forgiveness for the action that we have done in the past. But there has to be some kind of promise, some kind of commitment that I move towards the aspiration. And then that brings some level of certainty. So what happens is, forgiveness is only one side of the coin. It's a very important side of the coin. But along with forgiveness, see, one side is forgiving. That is generally for the past. Okay, whatever you did at this time, you spoke like this, you did like this, I forgive. That is for associated with the past. But along with that, there is trusting, which is for the future. That every time we enter into any kind of relationship, there is a certain level of trust over there. When you work in a company, there's a trust that at the end of the month, the company will pay you. When any relationship, there is a certain level of trust. When a guru initiates a disciple, the guru is expected the disciple will follow the principles that are expected of a disciple. So there is a trust over there. So now what happens is, forgiving and trusting, they are related, but they are distinct. So forgiving broadly is for the past, trusting is for the future. And the two are not understood as different. It creates a lot of problems. So in one sense, forgiveness is to be given, but trust has to be earned. So I'll talk about this as we come back to this. But let's now try to look at it. So in principle, I said that life is irreversible and unpredictable. So because it's irreversible, I did something to hurt you, but what can I do now? If you don't forgive me, how will we move on in life? But unless I commit to becoming a better person, why would you trust me? That the unpredictability of life, to some level, we want to make it predictable. So now this is to make this a little more philosophical. I'll make it, so education has two aspects: to make the simple complicated and to make the complicated simple. So sometimes what we think of simple is complicated, and we have to see how complicated it is. And sometimes what is complicated, okay, it's not so complicated also. So I'm trying to go into philosophical direction, because then when what we do practically in terms of forgiveness, the starting contrast, like there are wars, and in the spiritual books there are wars, and then they also talk about forgiveness. How does it go together? I try to explain that. So in the Bhagavad-Gita's 16th chapter, it's described that there are two kinds of people. Dau bhuta sargau lokesmin, daiva asura evacha. Now it's interesting, although Krishna talks about two kinds of people, but he is broadly what he's talking about is two kinds of natures. And he's talking about the qualities and activities associated with the two natures. That means, and if you see, these qualities are a mix. So while divine and demoniac are two categories of people, divine and demoniac, we could say, are tendencies which are present within each person. So for example, say we all have a higher self and a lower self. I'll just use these words right now. We could use the word intelligence and the mind, but the mind is not always the lower self. So like sometimes you may say the good dog and the bad dog. There is a part of us which wants to be better. There's a higher self and there's the lower self. So now going back to our earlier point, the higher self is associated with our aspiration. Aspiration is basically the best version of me, how I would like to be. I always like to be punctual, I always want to be reliable, I always want to be responsible. All those are the aspects of the higher self. Now, is the lower self associated with my action? Not necessarily. My action often falls somewhere over here in between. Now, an aspiration is like a more refined word for a dream. A dream often is said to depend on a lot of things beyond our control. Like when you say, my dreams came true, what it means is that it's something beyond me made the dreams come true. But aspiration is what I do to make the future better. So we could say associated with our lower self is our degradation. Now, nobody wants to be degraded, but the idea is even people who are degraded don't think they are degraded. But the idea is we could say our worst version. So our aspiration is associated with our best version, our lower self is associated with our worst version. Now, most of the time we exist somewhere in between. So we could say often the aspiration is our public version. So in public, I might be very gentle and polite and kind. In private, I might be very cruel, maybe very manipulative. That's possible. So that could be my lower self. But broadly, there is this lower self and the higher self. The Daivi side with each person and the Asuri side with each person. So now the idea is that if this is the person, now in that person, there is a higher self and there is the lower self. So I'll just use HS and LS in future. Higher self, lower self. So now when the person acts, what happens is, it is sometimes that when a person is acting, okay, how do I draw this? Okay. So when a person acts, anyway, I'll not try to make it too complicated. Let us see. So here, when a person acts, sometimes it is their higher self may act. That means what happens is the best version of the person comes out. Now sometimes it may happen that their lower self may act. So it's like in cricket there are some teams which are like super unpredictable. One day they might beat the champion team and the other day they might be beaten by a qualifier team. Like you don't know which version of the team is going to come on a particular day. Some players are also like that, they're very moody. So what happens is, like that for us, when we act, sometimes the higher self might come out, sometimes the lower self might come out. And now, ideally, we all would like the higher self to come out. We all want the higher self to manifest, the better side of us to manifest more and more. So now there are broadly, as I said, I talk about these two possibilities, that the higher self manifests, the lower self manifests. So that means higher self, I'm the best version, I'm the worst version. So if, let's look at this now, that if a person is trying to, their higher self is trying to fight against the lower self, then if somehow their lower self comes out and they do something which they didn't want to do, they are themselves trying to fight against the lower self. So then we should not identify them with their lower self. Or you are like that. At that time, if they are doing the inner fight, then they deserve outer forgiveness. But there is a possibility that for some people there is no inner fight. Now, there is no inner fight possible in two cases. One is the higher self is so strong that they don't have any lower self at all. And the other is the lower self is so strong that there is no higher self. So now in both cases, there will not be much of a fight. So now the higher self is so strong, those are saints. They will never do anything to hurt anyone. But in the case when the lower self is so strong, that the lower self is all that manifests, those are people who are considered demoniac people. And such people, that means that distance between aspiration and action, it is not only great, it is becoming greater and greater and greater. Or there is no aspiration only for them. This is how I am, this is how I will be. So if a person is not ready to fight against their lust, against their anger, against their greed, in the 16th chapter, shall talk about these three things as the three gates to hell. So if that person is not ready to fight against their lust, anger and greed, then society has to fight against them. Society has to stop them. So the idea is that if I can control my lower nature, sometimes it may come out, but if I'm trying to fight it, I'm trying to control it, occasionally it comes out, forgive me for it. But if I stop fighting against my lower nature, I surrender to the lower nature, or I start fighting for my lower nature. So then what happens? And forgiving such a person would mean disaster for society, isn't it?
How do they get to know somebody having an ego?
Okay, we'll come to that. Yeah, that's a good point. But in principle, at this point, so philosophically, the idea is forgiveness is necessary because our lower nature, against our will, sometimes wins. But then, if that's not happening, then the person has to be punished. That's where punishment and justice come in. So, broadly we could say, if within a person, the higher self is much stronger than lower self, then it's best to forgive them most of the time. But if the lower self is much higher than stronger than the higher self, then at that time they need to be punished. Basically, justice has to be there, and justice could mean some form of disciplining or punishing. So with this understanding, now let's look at the Bhagavad-Gita, 18th chapter, where there seems to be two contradictory statements about virtues that are laudable for people. We look at the Brahmana's virtues, and then look at Kshatriya's virtues. So here, let's recite this verse. Shamodamastapah shaucham Shantir arjavamevacha Jnanam vijnanamastikyam Brahma karma swabhavajam. Would you like to read this? Do you have mic? Yes, please.
Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work.
Very good, thank you. So, Shanti here is tolerance. Shanti can be forgiveness, peacefulness, tolerance. So, this is a quality of a Brahmana. If you go to the next verse, Shauryam tejo dhrutir daksham Yuddhe chapya palayanam Danam ishvara bhavascha Shatram karma sabhavajam. Who would like to read this?
Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity and leadership are the natural qualities of work-perfect Kshatriya.
Yes, thank you. So here, Shauryam, one of the qualities is Yuddhe chapya apalayanam. The Prabhupada translates it as courage in fighting. Now, apalayanam is not fleeing, not running away. And Yuddhe is fighting. So, not fleeing from a fight, not flinching from a fight, not hesitating when there is a confrontation. Now, if you see Shanti and Yuddhe chapya apalayanam, they're almost opposite qualities. Tolerance means whatever somebody has done, forget it, leave it, forgive it. So this is about don't take it too seriously, just tolerate it. But Yuddhe chapya apalayanam is where this fight is required, fight. Don't just tolerate. In fact, don't hesitate from a fight. It's a Yuddhe chapya apalayanam. So palayanam could be physically running away from a fight. It could also be mentally flinching from a fight. Right? Don't flinch from a fight. Don't flee from a fight. So, in one sense, the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, they have opposite qualities being described over here. So, Brahmanas are said to be tolerant and forgiving, and Kshatriyas are supposed to fight and establish dharma, establish order. So, the idea over here is, so here from the philosophical part, now I am moving to the sociological part now. So, in society, basically, relationships that are there, they are there at the level of an individual and they are at the level of a state. By state, I mean, you could have a country, you could have any organizational setup, you could have any company, We could have like, European Union is like a super state, conglomeration, many countries, many states. So at an individual level and a social level. So at an individual level, forgiveness is always a desirable, even essential virtue. That I will hurt you, you will hurt me. And I should be ready to forgive you and you should be ready to forgive me. At the level of individual relationships, we all need to be forgiving. However, at the level of the state, as an individual virtues, forgiveness is good. At the level of the state, forgiveness cannot be a state policy. The state has to operate based on justice. The state has to operate based on law and order. So, if the state starts saying that anybody who commits a crime will forgive them, then what will happen is, sometimes they say forget and forgive. So, what happens is, or forgive and forget. So, the state will say we will forgive you, and the criminals will say we will forget that there is any law at all. You see? So, forgive and forget will work in the worst possible way. And in political philosophy right now, political philosophy is about how should, the word politics has a positive connotation, negative connotation. Negative connotation is that don't do politics. That means don't do manipulation, don't do backbiting. But politics also refers to the way a country is governed. And that's why I call it political science. We may study that in school, civics in India we used to call it before. So now in political philosophy, there is this idea that when the government is there, how should the government deal with crime? So now I'm talking at a sociological level over here. So why these Brahmana and Kshatriya virtues are different? So there are, as you know, there is left and there is right. So this is not, I'm not talking about geographical left and right over here. I'm talking about political left and right. So basically what happens is, whenever we function in any larger group, as individuals, when we function within a collective, so what happens is the individual has to do something for the collective and the collective has to do something for the individual. So in a country, we pay taxes and the country should provide us facilities. So whenever there are social problems, so the mood of the right is that the society is good, the individual is bad. The individual should fit into the system. So like India is good, Indians are not so good. Indians make a mess, Indians don't have a civic sense, Indians don't do this, Indians don't do that. So the right is all about individual responsibility. The individuals, the system is good, the system has worked for others. If you are not working in the system, then if you are not succeeding, it's your problem. You work harder, you become smarter, then you will succeed. So generally the right is about individual responsibility. That you have to contribute more to the system. Now the left is generally associated with social change, social justice, social responsibility. So the idea is, left will talk about we need to change the society. Now this is there are so many poor people in the world, there's so much wealth inequality. So the right will say if there is wealth inequality, it is because the wealthy people have worked harder. They got educated, they worked hard, they were intelligently planned, and they say that's how they got money. And if people are poor, that's because they mismanage their lives. And the left will say, no, the system is rigged. The poor people, they don't just have a chance to grow up. And the wealthy people, they keep the wealth and they pass it on generation after generation. Now, who is right? Well, both have some element of truth in it. That the individual has to function better than the system, and the system also has to work better. So, for example, Indians who leave India, they often become very successful wherever they go. So, Indians in general are hardworking, tax-paying, law-abiding, family-raising. And if they felt that the Indian system was not very good, so they left. And they found a system where their work was rewarded. They succeeded. Now, to some extent, India is improving. Many Americans from India are coming back. Many are still going. But the idea is, as some people may say, the system doesn't work. We'll just leave the system. Some people say we'll try to fix the system. So why are we talking about all this now? I'm talking about crime specifically. See, with respect to crime, the right has the philosophy, the criminal is the problem. Punish the criminal. Punish the criminal so strongly that that person will never again dare to commit a crime, and nobody else will also dare to commit a crime. And the left's attitude is that actually the person committed a crime because society left him with no option. Him or her with no option. This person was so poor, this person tried, but there was no educational opportunities, no employment opportunities. What could that person have done? So let them be what? We should not be hard on the crime. We should understand the root causes of crime and address those. So in one sense, you could say, broadly speaking, this is again oversimplification, but just to connect with our subject, the right focuses more on justice. You did wrong, you have to suffer. The left says, forgive. Okay, that person did wrong because they were in a bad situation. And that's why they did wrong. So now, what is the right way to function? It is very difficult to say. But where the left becomes too influential, so during the pandemic, it happened in California, they said that anybody who robs any supermarket, like there are shoplifters and robbers, if they rob anything below $750, no, the police will not even press a charge against them. So it's like there's no arrest, no registers, because people are poor, they need food. They will rob. But there are supermarkets, when they were robbed, people were not taking bread and basic necessities. They were taking iPhones or second-hand, third-hand versions of iPhones which are less than $750. They're taking like Louis Vuitton purses, and they're taking all these things and then they're selling them on eBay. So what happens is, it created chaos. In fact, it happened, I don't know which state in America, that it happened that some thief, he broke into a house, and when he broke into the house, in that house there were small children who were playing, and the owner of the house, because he was taking care of the children, he had left a knife on the floor. And the thief jumped in, and the thief's leg fell on the knife, and his leg got cut. And the thief sued the homeowner. And the homeowner had to actually pay for the full treatment of the knife. So the idea is, okay, I came to rob, but that does not mean I deserve to have my foot cut. You kept the knife wrongly, you are responsible for it. So what happens is, we can go too far on the side of becoming too liberal, if it becomes a state policy that you forgive, then what will happen is crime will go rampant. So with respect to at a societal level, there has to be by default justice. In general, if you are done wrong, you are responsible. Now, as an exception, at the state level, there can be forgiveness. At the state level, the forgiveness has to be exception, not the norm. At the individual level, in our one-to-one relationships, forgiveness should be the norm. Justice should be the exception. Say if inside a family there's a property dispute, but there's no need for siblings to go to the court. Try to see how we can resolve it amicably. It's not always possible, but so in our individual relationships, forgiveness is what is required. But in the state, there is more of a justice that is required. So now, in scriptures, generally the Lord descends as a Kshatriya. And the Lord is dealing with downright demoniac people. And that's why now we may see the reality of the war. I was in Princeton giving a talk, and after that one professor came and he said, I read the Bhagavad-Gita. He said, what Arjuna says in the first chapter, I like that. What Krishna says, I didn't like it at all. He says, Arjuna is saying, let us not fight, let us not have any war. And Krishna is telling him, fight. What kind of God is this? So now the thing is that often if we want to, see, the Gita is primarily a philosophical book. It starts from a war field. But if the war field is too much in people's minds, then it's important that they understand the Mahabharata, or at least some things of the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata depicts three things. How many wrongs the Kauravas did again and again and again. Horrible wrongs. And they kept doing it worse and worse and worse. And then how many efforts the Pandavas made to try to settle peacefully. including Krishna himself going. And third is how completely brazenly, shamelessly the peace efforts were rejected. So when Duryodhana said, I will not give enough land to put the tip of a needle through. So what does it mean? I don't care for your peace efforts at all. Not even a symbolic gesture I am ready to do. So basically, going back to our starting point, that here the scriptures depict how the people on that side were completely given to the demoniac nature. So normally it says it should be Narayana Parayana, but there are people who are Kama Krodha Parayana. They are surrendered to their lust and anger. And such people, there is no option at all. So when Krishna descends as a, you could say, a Kshatriya, as a manager, as an administrator, as a state leader, that when he has to deal with demoniac people, then that at that time, what is required is strong punishment is required. So now taking that point of higher, low, near and lower nature, let's talk about three kinds of people broadly. There are people with goodness, there are people with weakness, and then there are people with wickedness. So we can say people with goodness are the people where their higher nature, higher self is much stronger than their lower self. Wickedness is people whose lower self is stronger than higher self. Weakness is where their higher self and their lower self are both almost equal. So now which will win? It depends on circumstances. That's why they are weak. If they come under the influence of the higher self, if they come in a situation which promotes goodness, they will act well. If they come in a situation where there's wickedness, they will act wickedly. So what happens is that with respect to people with goodness, forgiveness is by default the desirable thing. They will generally never do wrong, but if after all they do wrong, it should immediately be forgiveness. However, people with wickedness, what happens is, here if they do wrong, they are themselves feeling bad about, oh, I should not have done this. Their own conscience is beating them up internally. They don't need to be beaten up by anyone else. Because that the higher self is so strong in them. Now, in this case, this forgiveness actually leads to their goodness becoming stronger. But on the other hand, people who have this wickedness, for them, if there is forgiveness, what will happen is, their wickedness will become stronger. That they will think, okay, I got away with this, let me do it more. And they will do it more. And so in that sense, forgiveness in the face of wickedness is actually foolishness. One who offers forgiveness, that is forgiveness for those in goodness, this is kindness. This is, you can say, this is kindness and this is blindness. So the idea is somebody is repeatedly doing bad things. In fact, in many ways, this is actually a defining tension in the Mahabharata. So till now it is all philosophical. Let's discuss some stories to illustrate some of these principles now. So if you see in the Mahabharata, what is the first wrong that is done to the Pandavas? Poisoning of Bhima. So when Bhima is poisoned, he survives. We won't go into the whole story. He survives and comes back. And when he comes back, he knows that is Duryodhana who tried to do this. He's so angry. He said, I will beat Duryodhana. I'll teach him a lesson. At that time, Yudhishthira says, no. He says, right now, Yudhishthira gives three reasons. First, he says is that you have no evidence. It will be your word against his word. Second is, we are new over here. We don't really know which of the elders will support us and who will not support us. And third is that we don't want to break our family apart. Maybe he's just a little insecure. And if we show him that we are not a threat to him, then maybe his insecurity will go away. So what happens is that at this stage, like you're asking the question that how do we know if there's an inner fight in someone or not? We don't know. So Yudhishthira in one sense gives him the benefit of the doubt. So insecurity is natural in everyone. Say, if we are doing something and then somebody else, if we are very good kirtanier in a community, and suddenly some other devotee comes and that devotee does just as good kirtan or better kirtan than us, and that devotee starts getting invited everywhere to do kirtan, you may start feeling insecure. Okay, do I have any place or not? Do I have any service or not? Isn't it? Now, this insecurity is natural human. It's a natural human emotion. Sometimes this insecurity may be mistaken for envy, but it's not envy. Insecurity can lead to envy. So insecurity is more about, do I have some place or not? Do I have some value or not? But envy is, why does this person have such a place? Why does this person have such a value? I want to pull down this person. So envy is more in the mind. But from there, it can go to enmity, where we actually act to start to destroy that person. So Yudhishthir gave Duryodhan the benefit of the doubt. And Bhima did not like that idea, but Bhima went along with it. But then what happened? It was not just insecurity. It was not just envy. It was active, malevolent envy in the form of enmity. And what is the proof of that? The proof was that Duryodhan tried something bigger. See, if there is an inner battle going on between the higher self and the lower self, if the person does something wrong, they learn from it and they won't do that wrong again. But he did something not just wrong, even worse wrong. Previously it was the Pandavas being targeted, Bhima being targeted, now it is all the Pandavas along with their mother. So, which was especially brutal. Wanted all of them to be burned alive. So his misdeed worsened. And then after that, there's a gambling match, which was public cheating. But then after that, it was publicly, it was unfair match. But then what was worse was that he tried to disrobe Draupadi. Now we may say that as compared to poisoning someone or as compared to burning someone alive, disrobing someone is not that big a crime. But actually it is a worse crime. Because all those previous things were done in private. They're done in secretly. But this was done publicly. There will always be predatory men who may want to attack women, assault women. But most such criminals will do it somewhere in some dark alley. They'll get them somewhere in private, where there are no eyewitnesses. But if somebody, that means they have some fear of the law. But if somebody does this in public, that means not only they have no fear of the law, if they do it in public, if they go to police station and do it, that means not only they have no fear of the law has fear of them. And then such people who's going to stop them? So Duryodhan's actions keep becoming worse and worse and worse. And when he rejects the peace proposal, and the same assembly where he's dishonored Draupadi first, then he dishonors Krishna. He tries to have him arrested. So just attempt to arrest also is a dishonor, even if it doesn't succeed. So then the Pandavas say enough is enough. So when, as I said, there's a higher nature, lower nature. When somebody shows no sign ever of acting according to their higher nature, and their lower nature itself is manifesting in worse and worse ways, then there is no scope for forgiveness over there. There has to be justice. And that justice was fighting and punishing. So similarly, we see in the Ramayana also, Lord Ram, there are so many chances. Both there were opportunities and there were warnings. And there are also demonstrations. Hanuman, when he burnt half of Lanka, that he basically spoke to Ravan in the language he could understand. The language of force, the language of power. Your power is not going to protect you. But still, he did not accept. So when a person is not ready to give up their lower nature, when a person is fighting for their lower nature, then the only thing that can be done at that time is punishment. At that time, justice, which leads to due punishment, is what is required. So there is people with goodness, there's weakness and wickedness. So now let's look at this a little bit more. That say, people with goodness generally don't make any mistake. So if you consider the Ramayana, Ravan is a character who is wicked. Now Kaikeyi is a character with weakness. So what is her weakness? She comes under the influence of mantra. And now Lord Ram never says that she should be punished. Now we could say it's a woman and a woman should not be punished. But Lord Ram does punish Shurpankhah. Tataka is also killed. So it is that it's not just that because she's a woman she's not punished. It is that she does have a change of heart. So a person in weakness, if that person comes under lower influence, they will do lower things. They come under higher influence, they will do higher things. So when Bharat was not there, that is the time Kaikeyi came under the influence of Manthara. But when Bharat came back, and Bharat chastised her, no, she just came back to us and says, what have I done? She became utterly horrified. And then she changed. She went with Ram. How do we know that she was changed? She went with Ram, went with Bharat to request Ram to come back. And that was the indication that her heart was changed. The very scheme that she had insisted happen, now she was trying to undo that scheme. So in the Mahabharata, we could say to some extent, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhan is the character with wickedness. So if you consider over here, and Dhritarashtra is the character with weakness. So as long as Duryodhan is there in Dhritarashtra's life, Dhritarashtra just can't do the right thing. Even if he does the right thing for a short time, then again he relapses into doing the wrong thing. But when Duryodhan is removed from his life, then Vidura's words start having more influence on him. And then he is able to become detached and become enlightened. So weakness is a bit iffish. So should people with weakness be forgiven? Well, yes. If they show some readiness to change. If they show some now Karna starts off as a good person overall. Karna comes under the influence of Duryodhan. And when Krishna goes as the peace messenger, he also talks with Karna. And Karna also has a dharma sammoha like Arjuna has. Karna has to choose between Kshatriya dharma and Mitra dharma. Arjuna has to choose between Kshatriya dharma and Kula dharma. So at that time, what does he do? Karna sticks with Duryodhan. And that means the Karna may not have been wicked. When I'm using the word weakness, this is not physical weakness. Karna was physically a great warrior. But we are talking about moral weakness here. Moral weakness means one gets influenced by others very easily. So Karna, he's himself in many ways a principled person, but his principles are misdirected. And that's why he had to be fought and he had to be killed. So forgiveness and justice, how does this work now? That let's elaborate on this. I'll make 2 more points. And then I know there are a lot of questions on this. If there are not a lot of questions, I will have a lot of questions. So let's look at it from, I'll make 2 points. As I said, this goodness, weakness and wickedness. So there is a higher self and a lower self in everyone. So now generally getting the higher, so within each individual, there is the higher self and there is the lower self. Now broadly speaking, if this is within the individual, and then the society generally, the society is actually, individual is within the society, but for depiction purposes, I will talk about the society as a separate unit. In the society, there are separate 2 leaders. There are the Brahmanas and there are the Kshatriyas. Now, broadly speaking, the purpose of the Brahmanas is to bring out the higher self. Broadly speaking. And the purpose of the Kshatriyas is to keep the lower self inside. To keep it inside, eventually to remove it. But, so in that sense, the Brahmanas work through Shastra. The Kshatriyas work through Shastra. Shastra means weapons. That means if you break the law, you will be punished. Now to some extent, Kshatriyas can also play a Brahminical role. But that's more of inspiration. There are 2 separate roles over here. So in one sense, the purpose of the Kshatriyas is to keep law and order. And then they keep law and order so that the Brahmanas can do the work of bringing out the higher nature. So because the Brahmanas' focus is on bringing out the higher nature. Now again, Brahmana and Kshatriyas is not by birth, it's by actually the guna karma, by their activity that they are doing. So the Brahmanas' work is to bring out the higher nature, and that's why they always see the higher nature. Their focus is seen on the higher nature, and that's why even if some transgression is committed against them, their mood is forgive. That's why Krishna says tolerate, forgive. The Kshatriya's mood is what? The Kshatriya's mood is to maintain law and order. And anywhere people's lower self starts coming out, if it comes out as one person, it will come in another person, it will come in another person. It will keep growing, it will keep becoming worse. So crush it whenever it comes. So in many ways, if you look at books like Manu Samhita and others, some parts of these books are quite controversial in today's terms. But often the idea was be ruthless about crime. Just punish it. Punish a person. Once you punish it, finished. Everybody will see that punishment is being done, and that punishment will make sure that other people will not do something wrong. So now what happens is the Kshatriya's purpose. So whenever there is justice, injustice, not injustice, but within justice, so injustice, within justice, there are three, you can say stakeholders. One stakeholder is the victim. The other stakeholder is the victimizer. And the third stakeholder is the people in general. So now what happens is, at one level, for the victimizer, at the very least, there has to be, now this is an elaborate discussion between Bhishma and Yudhishthir. It's a huge conversation in the Mahabharata. So at the very least, for the victimizer, there has to be restriction. That you committed a crime, you should not be able to commit a crime again. That is the purpose of justice. Now, for the victim, at the basic level, very basic level, there should be protection. Protection means that you should not have to live in constant threat. That one crime was committed against you, another crime will happen. So at a basic level, the victim should be protected. Now, at a much better level, for the victim, there should be some kind of reparation. Reparation means some kind of compensation, some kind of damages, that you were hurt and there should be some compensation made for you. At the best level, for the victimizer, there should be reformation. Not just restriction, but reformation. So restriction means make sure that the person's lower self doesn't come out again. Reformation means their higher self, their lower self becomes weaker, their higher self becomes stronger. So if when people are put in jail, at one level, you can't commit crimes again. Or at least for the period when you're in jail, you can't commit crimes. But that's not the only purpose of a jail. Sometimes the word is used, a correction center. The idea is that hopefully they can learn some vocational skills, they can learn to hold a job, and then they come up, they can become law-abiding citizens. Now, people in general, the people potentially can be victims, or people can also be victimizers. Isn't it? That means today the victimizer has made one person a victim, that tomorrow they may make somebody else a victim. So, but that's one way. So if the wrongdoer gets away with doing wrong with one person, then they may do wrong with 10 other people. If somebody makes a fraudulent scheme and defrauds one person of their money, and then if there's no action taken against them, then that person will do it against 10 other people also. So that's one side. But so people can become victimized. On the other side, if people see, hey, this person committed a crime and got away with it, I can also do a crime and get away with it. So people can also become victimizers. So for people in general, what should happen is that we want to protect them from being victims, and we also want to protect them from being victimizers. So for people, at the very least, there should be deterrence. Deterrence means don't commit crime. Don't commit crime, that you will be punished for that. So that is, you don't become a victimizer. But And at best, there should be confidence. Confidence that the law is so good that, I won't be victimized. And I won't be victimized. So, this may seem a little technical, but I think it's overall, I hope it's understandable, isn't it? There are multiple stakeholders over here. And this is all that a Kshatriya has to consider. Now, how many state leaders consider all this? How many systems of justice consider all this in each case? That's a different thing. But broadly, when the state is acting, it's not just between the two individuals, because it's going to affect society at large. And that's why the state generally will be inclined towards punishment, towards justice, which may involve punishment. And now when the individual is involved, when the individual says a Brahmana, or individual is acting in a Brahminical way, so it's just between me and you. You do something wrong, I'm ready to forgive you. So now that is very good. At the same time, what is involved is that, as I said, there is forgiveness for the past. When we forgive, it is for the past. And then for the future, it is trust. So I talked about a state at an individual, at an organizational level or Kshatriya level, what happens. So I'll talk about what happens at an individual level, then I'll conclude over here. So let's consider a few examples here. That broadly, that when I have forgiven someone for the past, now, like the question is this person actually trying to change or not? So is this person trustworthy or not? So broadly, there are two possibilities. We forgive. Now, when you talk about forgiveness can be at three levels. There is the forgiveness as an intention. I won't hold it against you. I'm not going to hold this as a grudge against you. So as an intention, this we should always try to have a forgiving attitude. Now, as an emotion, that when we forgive someone, we feel that weight of resentment, weight of vengefulness, just there on our heart, it goes away. Now that takes time. That will happen its own way. Now our intention of forgiveness will start the healing process. But exactly how long the healing will take, it depends. But it's like if I have a wound on my hand, and if I am continuously scratching it or rubbing it, it's going to go worse. But if, the wound was there, it is there now, but I'm not going to scratch it anymore, then that will begin the healing process. So in that sense, if I'm constantly replaying, this person did like this to me, this person did like this to me, this person did like this to me, then I'm not allowing the healing to happen. So I'm going to hurt myself much more. So forgiveness as an intention, we should try to have it as quickly as possible. I don't want to hold this against this person forever. But now the key part comes, forgive as action. So how do we do this? So in general, forgiveness as an action is something which has to be done with nuance. So at one level, we can say forgive and withhold trust. That means I will forgive you for now, but you have to show that you have changed. So withhold trust. So we will see this in the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto. It is described that after Kamsa killed the first 6 children of Devaki, and the 8th child turned out to be the goddess. Now Kamsa himself would worship the goddess. And when he saw from Devaki's womb the goddess has come, he just couldn't process it. What happened? How did this happen? Devaki is such a special person. And that goddess disappeared also. So he seems to have a change of heart over there. And he says, please forgive me. Oh, I am such a terrible person. How wicked and hard-hearted I am that I killed my own nephews. I killed so many children. I am a horrible sinner. While he is saying that itself, 2 verses later he says, actually, you can't blame me. Because Kali Yuga has really come. Even the Devatas have become liars. The Devatas made that Akashvani that your 8th child will kill me. That's why I did all this. I was so foolish to have trusted the Devatas. So he tries to push blame to the Devatas. And then after that he says, ultimately Vasudeva and Devaki, he actually probably points to Vasudeva. Vasudeva said the same philosophy to him when he was trying to protect Devaki from Kamsa. He says, ultimately everything happens by destiny. So your children dying is also destiny. So please don't hold me responsible and please forgive me. So what happens is that here he is, it's like there's a word called an apology, non-apology. It's like with one hand I'm apologizing and the other hand I'm taking back the apology. Sometimes somebody speaks something offensive and then the other person is very agitated, the other person is very hurt. And then says, I can say, I'm sorry I spoke those words. That is real apology. What I'm saying? If I say, I'm sorry if I hurt your sentiments. What I'm saying is, it's not that what I spoke is wrong. You are such a snowflake. You are such an oversensitive person that you got hurt by it. And I'm sorry you got hurt. So it's like you apologize with one hand, but take away the apology with the other hand. So what he's doing is like that, an apology, non-apology. But it's what is remarkable over there is, at that time, the Bhagavatam says Vasudeva and Devaki forgive. Vasudeva is such a saintly person and Devaki, they forgive him. How do you forgive somebody who's killed your own children in front of your own eyes? So it's an extraordinary thing. But the key point is, Vasudeva doesn't tell Kamsa, actually, the 8th child was Krishna and he's in Vrindavan. Why? He's forgiving, but he's not trusting. Because is he really a changed person? Is he or he is not? We don't know. So we may forgive, but then we can't trust at that time. Trust has to be earned. That's why I said forgiveness is for the past, trust is for the future. So now what does the future show? The future shows that he is not trustworthy. That he, for some time, seems to show some goodness, but after that immediately he ends up becoming a terrible person. Goes on a rampage, killing all babies that have been born recently. So then eventually Krishna kills him. So the point is, when we forgive and withhold trust, there are two possibilities. One is that person improves. If that person improves, then we forgive and forget. We forgive and forget. You can say forgive and trust. Then the relationship can become better. Or we may forgive for the past wrong, but still we may seek justice. We may punish the person. Okay, I'm not going to hold you for what you did wrong, but I am going to punish you. So if you see, the Kurukshetra war was not fought primarily for revenge. It was fought primarily for dharma, which means for justice. So that's why in the Gita, not once does Krishna even mention any of the atrocities the Kauravas have committed. Whether it is Draupadi is being dishonored or anything else at all. The point is, Krishna wants to give a philosophical motivation for Arjuna to fight. So now if you consider forgive and forget. So how does this work? Here we can consider, so forgive and seek justice. That is Vasudeva with Kamsa. Now if you consider another example over here, let's consider Ram and Sugriv. So what happens over here? That Ram and Sugriv, they make an agreement. Ram tells Sugriv that I will help you gain back your kingdom and your wife, and then you help me gain back my wife. So between kings there is an alliance like that. And Ram does that for Sugriv. But after that, the Chaturmasya starts, and for sages, it is a time of austerity. For Sugriva, it is like he has been for years in a zone with no Wi-Fi. And now he comes to a zone with full Wi-Fi and there's a lockdown all around. So, so there is a total Netflix binge for him, So he just forgets everything. And he gets into indulgence. And he forgets. So at that time, At that time, Tara reminds him, Hanuman reminds him, then Lakshman comes and shakes him up and reminds him. But then, once he remembers, then, so immediately he galvanizes the troops and then he's ready to fight. And after that, there is never any relapse. Just before the war, Ravan tries to tempt Sugriva. Ravan sends a messenger and he says that, Vali and I, your brother, we had a very good agreement. And let's continue that agreement. I'll offer you, I never hurt you in any way. You don't mess with me. You go back with your troops. And Sugriva says, no, I'm here to assist Lord Ram. So he does not get tempted. So there is a mistake. He delays in fulfilling his word. But that is, he reforms over there. So in that temptation, there's weakness and he comes under the influence of that situation. But then there is no need to hold it against that person. So in general, for us, it is important that we don't be naive and just equate forgiving and trusting and let anybody do anything. And then, this person said sorry, let's start trusting them again. That would be not good. But it is also not that if somebody has made a mistake, we don't even forgive them and we hold it against them forever. So in between these two is forgive in the sense of overlook the past wrongs and give the other person the opportunity to earn trust. And based on their actions, whether they earn trust or not, then we can act accordingly. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Our topic was on forgiveness and justice, how to find the balance. So I talked about 3 levels. First was at a philosophical level. So at a philosophical level, I talked about how that the past is irreversible. And we all commit mistakes. If our mistake, we are held for our edge of what we did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, then there'll be no chance for growth. If there is no forgiving, then all our energy will go in either defending or attacking. And there'll be no energy left for improving. So therefore, what happens? We don't want this. So that's why forgiving is what frees us in one sense to improve. But we want to improve. So for the future, it's unpredictable. So in that unpredictability, what happens is, what brings some amount of certainty is the promises we make, the aspirations we have. So I talked about this tension between our aspiration, what we would like to be, how we would like to be, and our action. This tension is always there. And generally we ourselves, our real me might be somewhere in between these two. So some action may be a little lower, sometimes may be closer to my aspiration. So now from the philosophical perspective, what happens is, within each person, there is a higher self and there is a lower self. So a person who is trying to fight against the lower self, then for that person, forgiveness is required. So if the higher self is much stronger than the lower self, then forgive. But if the person is not even trying to fight against the lower self is much stronger than the higher self, then that is where justice is required. If that person is not fighting, then the society has to be fighting to control. If I am not fighting to control my lust, then society has to keep my lust under control. If I am not fighting to keep my anger in control, then society has to keep my anger in control. So in that sense, forgiveness and justice. Then from a sociological perspective, this is a bit more complicated, but what we're talking about is that there's for Brahmana and Kshatriya. They're two different things. So Brahmanas often act at the individual level. Kshatriyas act at the state level. So state level, there's a different factor involved. So I talked about how, if we consider the purpose of the Brahmanas is primarily to get the higher self out, to enable the higher self to manifest. The purpose of Kshatriyas is to keep the lower self under control. Even if you have dark tendencies, you should not get them out. So now how to act at the Brahmanical way and how to act at the Kshatriya way, there's the two parts of the class. So when somebody is in an official position in a public role, so we discussed for Kshatriyas, for them justice they need to seek, because there are 3 distinct stakeholders. There is the victim, then there is the victimizer, and then there are the people in general. and all of them have to be dealt with appropriately. So victim, at the basic level, there should be protection. And it shouldn't happen to me again. At the best level, there should be reparation. Something bad happened to me, there should be some compensation that come for me. For the victimizer, at the least level, there should be restriction. They should not be allowed to do that again. At the best level, there should be reformation. They become better. Then similarly, for the people, they can become victimizers. So there should be deterrence. Don't do that. Don't do that. You will be punished. So visible punishment should be done. I say justice should not just be done, but it should be seen to be done. And then they should have confidence that I won't be victimized. So in that sense, the Kshatriyas have to act at this level. But then we talk at an individual level, how do we act? We talk about Brahmanas. So there's forgiveness as three distinct aspects. It is at the level of intention. You should always want to forgive. Don't hold grudges. The emotion, it will take time for the healing to happen. The action, for it to happen, we have to decide how to act. So how do we act and forgive? So we forgive, but after that, no trusting at that time. We withhold trust. We discussed the example of Vasudev with Kamsa. And from there, we can learn to trust and the relationship can become stronger. Or from there, we can go towards justice and punishment. So we discussed this is where Kamsa went. And this is where Sugriva went. So that way, for each one of us, when we are functioning in life, our purpose is we want to bring out our higher self and want to give others the opportunity to bring out their higher self. So we can't be, so we talked one more thing about what was that? About goodness, weakness, and wickedness. So for those who are wicked, that means their higher self is lower self is way stronger than higher self. They're not even ready to fight. So for them, there has to be forgiveness only. No, forgiveness would be foolishness at that time. That would be blindness. There has to be justice in the form of punishment. For those who have goodness, there should be always forgiveness. Now, because their higher self is much stronger than the lower self. And for the weak, the higher self and lower self are more or less, they're not the same, they have similar strength. So it depends. Then what are they ready to do? So it depends. If they are ready to come under the influence of somebody with higher self, they're ready to come under the influence of somebody with goodness, then they can be forgiven. But if they continue to stay under the influence of somebody in wickedness, then they have to be punished. So it depends, means we discussed the lower trajectory was Karna, the upper trajectory was Kaikai, and similarly Dhritarashtra. So in this way, forgiveness is, as I said, forgiveness and justice, it's a complex issue. In general, the state should be going towards justice and forgiveness is the exception. The individual should be going towards forgiveness and justice should be the exception. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So was this applause an expression of justice or forgiveness?
No, I mean, sometimes, let me take 5 minutes to express what I felt, and then we can take a lot of questions and answers. I'm sure Prabhuji said there has to be questions, he'll have questions. First of all, I really feel that I always wonder why is Krishna trying to ask Arjuna to fight? Because he also had valid reasons. And then, how is Krishna forgiving? Does Krishna even forgive? Right? In the whole thing. How does God think about forgiveness? Today, after hearing your lecture, I kind of got a glimpse of how God is thinking. That's what I felt.
Yeah.
So many trajectories and so many, my God, unbelievable number of combinations.
Like yesterday I was talking to Prabhu. When Mahaprabhu comes in a Brahminical role, he's forgiving. When the Lord comes in a Brahminical role, he focuses on forgiveness. When the Lord comes in a Kshatriya role, he focuses more on justice.
So, this whole, for a common person like me, with, I don't know, average or lesser than average IQ, when I look at my life, of how many places I have forgiven or I was forgiven, right? I don't know. Uh, and when we see so many incidents in life, whether or not to forgive, is always a big question. So first of all, I'm immensely grateful, Prabhuji, for you to bring so many concepts in one place and trying to give us a picture. I don't think we have seen or felt or heard of anything like this. I don't know whether I'll go to Saptarishi universities, but being a professor from there coming here. What Arjuna might have attended in Saptarishi universities should be nothing less than what you are trying to give. Prabhu. I think there's a lot to be learned at a state level, at an individual level. There's so much to learn of how to look at it. So I have many questions that have come on my mind, which I'm forgetting those questions also. While you are going one after the other, I was saying, I don't have pen and a paper to write and I was forgetting. But some of them I remember, I'll ask now. And when the mic comes back, I remember again. If you have enough time. So, first question I have is, probably, many times when we have a relationship with a person, we see somebody close the door. Yeah. We see an extreme end of a person, especially the violent side. Right? And once in life you see that violent side. For example, just throwing in an example, husband and wife, they had a fight. They had a big disagreement. And the wife went to the kitchen and brought a knife. Right? It just happened. And the husband is like, where is this going? Let's end the matter here. And then, in-laws came in, or children came in, or something happened, they settled the matter. And next day morning she's cooking upma, idli, everything is going on. But then every time he enters the kitchen, he's going to look at that knife. It happened yesterday night. It's an incident that he can't erase, because that was an extreme end of a human reaction. How do you deal with, how do you remove that memory? Because now the person is actually showing improvement. But then that edge of, what you saw is very scary. And it can repeat again. The person is capable of doing it again because he has done it once. Now, will he do it again? It's between him and Paramatma. But he has done it once. Yeah? How do you deal with such emotion?
Yeah. So, if in a close relationship somebody has shown a streak of violence, then that scars the other person's memory for life. And how does one go on in that relationship? Yeah, it's a difficult question. See, in the West, this is called as intimate partner violence, and it's quite a serious thing. And generally, it's males to females, but female to male is also possible. Generally, the male to female violence gets reported much more. The female to male violence, it is, the males feel much more embarrassed to report it also. Various reasons it is underreported. But in general, by nature, the males are stronger. So the violence occurrence also is male to female is much more. But this is a serious issue. And I'll go back to first, before I come how to address it, I'll see how this vertical tension comes over here also. Let's see, is it an individual thing or is it a social thing? So, now we say it's an individual thing, but let's take it a little bit more. See, in the Mahabharata, there is a difference made between a crime and a sin. A sin is more of a moral lapse. A crime is a legal wrong. So now a sin is something which can be forgiven by the church, by the temple, by the religious organization, or even say by the people involved. Say if somebody has an extramarital affair, that's a sin. Now how that people are going to deal with it, that's up to them. but it's not a crime. If there is a violent sexual attack, there is a rape, and that's a crime. So there's a difference between a sin and a crime. And one of the topics of Bhishma and Yudhishthira discuss is that should all sins be made into crimes? So for example, taking alcohol, should it be a crime? Or to what extent should the police or the state be legislating morality? So now this is not an easy question to answer. But what happens is that if every sin is made into a crime, then the state will become way overburdened. Like say, now if speaking lies is not good, but if somebody speaks a lie, then should the police get involved and punish the person? Now, if you're lying on a legal document, if you're lying and giving testimony in court, that's a different thing. So there is a sin and there is a crime. The sin is more the domain of the individual relationship between guru and disciple or family members or whatever. Crime is an issue with the state. So now in the Catholic Church, when there was child abuse, in other organizations, even there's been child abuse, child sexual abuse and child physical abuse happened. So one reason the church covered it up was that they thought it is a sin and we'll forgive it. But the state said it's a crime. You have to report it immediately. So now, if there is some unpleasant altercation among a husband and wife, and say sometimes things become physical. Now, is it a sin or is it a crime? It's definitely a wrong. Now, once it goes into the public domain, then it becomes a crime. And then after that, the relationship, it becomes very difficult to restore the relationship. But sometimes that is required in some rare cases. But now when it is a sin, so basically what happens is that continue this theme of weakness and wickedness and goodness. You could say that when a person does something wrongdoing, it can broadly be three categories. It can be circumstantial wrongdoing. Then the other could be intentional wrongdoing. And in between can be conditional wrongdoing. By conditional, I mean there is no adjective for conditioning. There's no English word called conditioning. So I'm using the word conditional. So what happens is that after somebody does wrong, there should be internal regret and there should be external reform. Now, if the wrong is circumstantial, then there is both. Internally the person feels bad and externally the person changes. If the wrong is intentional, then there is neither regret nor reform. So Duryodhan did not change for the better. And did he feel regret after trying to humiliate Draupadi or after trying to burn the Pandavas? Actually, he felt regret. His regret was my plan was not successful. So the thing is, now, in some ways, if there is regret and reform both, then we have to forget and forgive. But what happens is, in between there could be regret but no reform. That means a person actually apologizes, not just apologizes, but feels bad. But their conditioning may be so strong that they keep doing the same thing again and again. So now this is a difficult case to deal with. But then if there is a regret but no regret is there means what? That my lower self became stronger, I feel bad about it. That means I have enough higher self to recognize that my lower self becoming strong is bad. But still they come back and keep doing the same thing. Then the person has to be ready to accept some external restriction voluntarily. That, I can't control myself, I keep doing the same thing again. So I will accept some boundaries myself. So for example, somebody is alcoholic and they're trying to recover from alcoholism and they keep doing the same thing again and again. Then, but that person, each time they have a relapse, they regret it. I'm sorry, I will never do it again. And they again do it. So then they should be ready to accept some serious external regulation. Maybe I'll not keep any loose cash with me. I'll never go to any party where there's any alcohol is there. In some places, it's like somebody is alcoholic, they try to recover for alcohol, then you inform the neighboring bars and they don't serve alcohol to that person. Whatever regulations are there, the person is ready to seriously accept some limitations, some boundaries, some restrictions. Then at least that person is showing sincerity that I don't want to do it. So now applying all this to your point about this all background, that when we are scarred, naturally we can't just give up the scar, but it has to be more focus on not about what will that person do and what my mind gets triggered, but how that person is. So everybody has a dark side, and that because their dark side went to a particular alarming level in the past doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. So if there is regret and if there is reform, then it's best to try to consciously cultivate the memories of that person being a good person. So, we can't change our memories, but we can choose which memories we replay. So by choosing those memories to replay, then what happens is we can actually focus on the positive in the relationship. But that other person also needs to be especially cautious. That person has to be cautious that I should not do anything which will trigger my partner like that. So I think if both sides it is there, if the person who has done that wrong thing, that person is aware that I did this and I don't want to ever do this again. Person is very cautious to not even go in that direction. And the person who is on the other side, cultivate the positive memories of that person more. So in one sense, we all have to have I met a devotee from Europe recently. He told me how he came to Bhakti, how he came to God and eventually came to Bhakti. He said he used to get very angry, and when he would get angry, he would just throw objects around. And he would cause some damage, destroy some objects. And he said that one time he had got angry and he was throwing some things around, and he picked something to throw. His wife screamed, "Stop!" And then he realized he'd actually picked up their baby and he's about to throw the baby. So what had happened was that it's a newborn baby, and before the baby had been born, they had got like a baby doll to learn how to take care of a baby, how to give respiration when the baby stops breathing. So there is for training they had got the baby, and he in his anger thought that it is a doll, and it was actually the real baby. And when he saw that, he stopped immediately. But he says that was the time I really got scared of myself. So in one sense, he said that made me really take it seriously. I have to change. And then he said, I started reading books on philosophy, psychology. Then eventually I came to spirituality. Then he came to Krishna consciousness. The point is that each one of us, we need to have a healthy fear of our dark side, of our lower self. That maybe you may say it was one time only I did that. Why are you remembering it? But instead of accusing the other or being defensive, we ourselves, no, I had gone nearly that far. So that means that side is with me. So that side is there within me. So I have to have a healthy fear that I don't trigger or empower it in any way. So we can say that, to some extent, we have to have that healthy faith that Krishna can change us, that we can change, that we have a higher self. If we focus only on our lower self, we will always become very fearful and paralyzed. But we can't just be complacent or nonchalant. That be terrified of how terrible I may become, or how much wrong I can do. And then that helps us to stay on track. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was very well answered. Thank you. I think I got some very good points. He said, so my takeaway is the person who is performing such an act, they have to go through a lot of internal introspection, and they should make sure that the dark side doesn't come out again and again. And the person who has faced such act has to understand that it can happen because everybody has a dark side. That's necessarily not the way the person has mostly behaved. It was one of the cases, and you should try to remember the memories which will improve the relationship rather than destroy the relationship. That's what I do.
Yes. So what I spoke in 11 minutes, you spoke in 50 seconds.
Might take a minute. I said many things.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, I would like to take this opportunity to look at all the wonderful couples here. I'd like to say something as something that me and my wife, we keep seeing many times, that we have come to spirituality, Koji and Mataji, but we are carrying our past baggages, right? And sometimes we see that husband or wife, doesn't matter, they go hurting the opposite partner to a very extreme end. Sometimes you should understand that we are actually putting scars on each other, right? And the other person also can't say that every act is a scar. That is also another end. So, yeah, there will be tensions between couples, and we are always there. We are a bigger family. Don't think that me and my wife are any counselors. We also have counselors. We also have our own dark sides, upsides, low sides. But while we are in a relationship, we have to be very careful that we are not putting scars. We should make sure that we are not putting a scar on opposite person. The scar can be an extreme behavior. And then the call happens, and then both of them blame each other that Prabhuji, she's told to me like this, Mataji, why did you even get to that point? And another thing, just because we have somebody to listen to doesn't mean that every issue has to be brought to that person. A house is a place where you can talk and sort out things, right? When it should not come out. Doesn't mean again that it should not come out, right? And we should have a friend in our spiritual life and attend lectures like this. This is a gold. This is real valuable gold. Gold price is rising there, but this is what is real gold. Right? So many times I've seen that wife calls and she tells so many bad things about the husband. You almost project that fellow is nothing less than Osama bin Laden or something like that. Come on, don't take it to that point. Because what world is going to do? They are only going to take advantage of your weakness, of you telling it. Right? You have to think what is your role also in it. What did I do to trigger something like that? Of course, there are some bad people, but those bad people are in web series, not in your house. Because unfortunately, we are seeing crime at the last edge today. Earlier, that was not the case. Somebody, I hate to put the example, somebody cut somebody's head off in Rajasthan. You wouldn't even know that sitting in Hyderabad. That is not even possible. But today, news is showing beheadings around the world. And then you are thinking, it can also happen to me. So we are already surrounded by extreme examples of what media can show. Exposure to extreme. So you can add it then, you are hearing all this, but can tell your perspective. Now that perspective, when you're seeing all that crime in web series and movies and news and all that, and then you come into argument with your own spouse or your children or your parents or your friends or your neighbors, right? And then you start imagining or you start performing. It can bring out the dark side of you. So I would say it's a homework for me that from my childhood, for some reason, I like horror movies. I don't know why. Horror movies, And it's not like I like to see the devil. Whenever the devil comes, I lower the volume and I close my eyes. But until the devil comes, I'm excited to see. But of late I'm thinking that that has created a very bad impression inside me. I'm not appreciating something nice also. I don't know why I told that example. But movies, media, and so many things around us is affecting us. Don't think it's not affecting us. It is affecting us. Whether we want to trigger our darkest side in front of the most precious person in our life. Whether it's a friend, a wife, husband, children, we have to be really careful. And don't think the solution is there anywhere else. Because today, this is my second question to you, is that you talked about state reforming Okay? And then he talked about Brahmins reviving the good side out of you, and the Kshatriyas subduing the bad side in you. Now there are many government acts that have been passed for valid reasons, like SC/ST Act or Dalits Act, or Husband and Wife Act, where Alumni Act, or some kind of Protection Act. There's so many acts of government that were passed for the right reason. From a Kshatriya perspective, they were done. If I can relate to this presentation of yours, but the society is not revived on the other end. Now, what is happening? Yes, there was a validity for them to be done, and even now they might be valid in some regions in some corner of India. But right now they are being abused to the maximum extent.
Yeah.
Even in devotee community, I'm sorry to say, it's the moment you say devotee community, oh my God, why can't you? We are not devotees yet. We are trying to become a devotee. So with that thing, the wife is calling and telling, I'm going to sue my husband, and can you tell me, should I put alimony case on him? Should I put this case on him? Should I put that case on him? What is the difference? That fellow didn't even do all that, but now you're going to an extent where you are ready to do anything, to get. And if you go to a lawyer, the first thing lawyer is doing is he's putting all those acts. He's educating how to more worsen the situation. And then finally parents come into place and they say, what are you both doing? Let's sit down and let's discuss. Don't get into the extreme thing. So my question is, Prabhu, with all these things that the state has done, Kshatriyas have done, without revival from the Brahmanas, how do you deal with the insecurities in the mind that people can go to any extent to harm you tomorrow? It can be spouses, it can be friends, it can be communities like Dalits or SCs or STs. How do you handle such fear?
Okay. That's almost a class. So, I'll start with the last point, and if we come back to other points, we'll look at it. But so the government tries to do something for curbing the lower side of people, but then that ends up itself. When the government does something to curb the lower side of people, that ends up sometimes facilitating the lower side of some other people. Some other people start using it. So something, I'll give a more related, shocking or more tragic example. In America, I go to various places. So one devotee who hosts me in one place, the husband and wife called me, and they told me we are planning to divorce. And both of them were together on phone. Normally people are going to divorce, they won't be together on phone to call. So I had been there many times at their home. I said, what happened? So they said that they have a small daughter, and the daughter has got some very complicated Lyme's disease or something like that. And there's a treatment, but it's a super expensive treatment. And their normal insurance doesn't cover that. So now they're well-to-do, but still it's a very expensive treatment. It's an experimental treatment, whatever it is. So when they got to the hospital, specialist hospital for treatment, the hospital itself told them that, if you divorce, then she becomes a single mother. And as a single mother, the state will provide for the treatment. So now the thing is that in the West, unfortunately, it happens that sometimes men, women unite, and the man doesn't want to take responsibility. Most of the time, the woman will abort the child. What else can she do at that time? It's a terrible thing, but it's a terrible situation. But in the times when she has a child and she gives the child, then who's going to take care? The state should take care of the child. Or the state should provide support for the mother, and she can take care of the child. But what has unwittingly happened by that is that for a woman, if she is married, then she has to work, her husband has to work, and then take care of the child. But if she's unmarried, then the state will provide facilities. So single mother may not even have to take a job. The government provides, in some states, the government provides so much facilities. So one of the principles in the Upanishad is Om Purnam Adaha Purnamidam. So the idea is Krishna is the supreme whole. Now the idea is each whole should be complete in itself. So the family should take care of the family. The community should take care of the community. The state should take care of the state. So the more a smaller unit starts depending on the larger unit, the more the smaller unit starts becoming weaker. So in the West also, say before the previous century, there were no old age homes. There were the people who take care of the elders. After Second World War, what happened in America? America was very prosperous, and all the war veterans came back. Many of them were injured. The state said, you have all served us, so we will take care of you. And they built elaborate housing and they created all supports for taking care of them. Now, what the state could have done at that time is that we will provide the support to your family so that your family can take care of them. So then the generational bonds would have been there. But instead they said, we will take care of them. And the result of that was that idea that generational bonds were broken. And now it's almost a norm that the children never take care of the parents, and it's not even expected. That's not at all a good thing. So unwittingly, now it may not be intentional, but if support from a higher level weakens the lower structure, then that is unhealthy. So that's why what you're talking about is, in a family, if there are problems, sometimes we need to vent out. We need to speak to someone else. But whoever third person we speak to, that third person should not be weakening the family bond, should be helping to strengthen the family bond. Many times, especially in America, the places I see that Indian couples, even if they have their differences, quite often they work out their differences. But when they come to India from America, your sister said this to me, and your brother said this to me, and your mother said this to me, and your father said this to me. And then it just becomes an unnecessary fight. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but the thing is, when there's a larger unit, and the larger unit does not support the smaller unit, then it becomes a big problem. So like the law, if its focus is not on supporting the family unit, it is on fragmenting the family unit so that they can make more money through the court. Because in the law, how it is that the more the damages a particular spouse gets, the more of a percentage the lawyer gets. Or the longer the case goes on, the more the lawyer is paid. So that's why that is a bit of a tension, that when there is a problem in one particular unit, ideally speaking, the unit itself should be trained to deal with that. The family should be able to solve the problems within the family. But if they cannot, then there have to be the larger unit which actually supports the smaller unit. So unfortunately, many of the state policies, say the way they are right now, that they don't support the smaller unit. And that's why it's like the pendulum very rarely stays in the middle. So it goes from one extreme to the other extreme. The other extreme, it goes back to this extreme. So I think that's why for us as spiritualists, when Krishna consciousness is not just like adding one more activity in our life, I come to satsang or I chant Hare Krishna. It's like a whole worldview. And within the worldview, like Loka Sangraham Evapi Sampashyan Kartumarasi. Loka Sangraha is the maintenance of the world. So maintenance of the world means each unit in the world. It could be a family, it could be a country, it could be a community. So each one of us needs to become better equipped to play our role in the maintenance of the community, in the maintenance of the larger whole that we are a part of. And the larger culture, how does it influence? In the philosophy, there's philosophy of everything. So there's philosophy of media also. So in the philosophy of media, they say, does the media reflect the culture in the society, or does it affect or shape the culture in the society? Now, both are there, true, but in many ways, because the media depicts the most extreme things, that can fuel our fears. And once that happens, then again, that larger unit, it is eroding the strength in the smaller unit. Everybody needs entertainment. Yuktahara viharasya. Vihara is also there in that. So recreation is required, but the recreation should not be causing weakening of the bonds that sustain us. Does that answer the question?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much. Of late, 2-3 cases in the last 1 or 2 months I'm hearing extreme, like SC/ST cases being filed. It's becoming a tool now. Just for the sake of telling, like one of the family who wants to come to a Bhakti center here, and they stay in a flat, and there happens to be one religious person in that flat, not Hindus, and they decided that they want to take over all the flats and forcefully make them sell. And they have got nothing to do. And then now they filed a SC/ST case on their family. Who filed? The watchman in the flat.
That you are discriminating against
That
us.
you are discriminating something. And the case is filed and arrest warrant is issued. And now they are telling you sell it for a less price or get out. Or you go to the jail. You can take extreme. And this is not the first one. I don't want to keep telling cases. That's not the goal. But the way system is being abused, the way the kind of fear that is created, and it's actually happening in front of us. Now, I told you, don't go and look at your watchman in the community, that's not the goal. But, the principles that you told there, the Brahmanical revival is very essential. Otherwise, this kind of laws and things that are kept in place, really extreme.
See, laws, it's like, again, the Mahabharata, a lot of fascinating discussion. So, one of the principles about to what extent can laws help in bringing about change in human behavior? So, it's that can a top-down effort bring change at a ground level? Well, it depends on whether there is ground level appreciation of the need for the change. If that is not there, 2 examples of this. Say that in Australia now, recently they have made a very strong social media ban for teenagers. And at one level it is good, but what has happened is France also. But what has happened is basically in Australia, the VPN subscriptions, they're 10 times they multiplied. So basically everybody changes their geolocations and they access from elsewhere. So yes, you can ban it, but unless we have some communication with the teenagers and persuade them that this is harmful and therefore you should not do it, just a top-down ban will not work. In America, the government tried to ban abortion. And all that happened was that the Republican states, they tried to ban abortion. And the Democrat states, they just became like asylums for abortion. And whoever wants to do, they can just go there and the way the issue has become that now abortion is bad, it's not at all a good thing. But when it's top-down imposed, it just doesn't work. So that's why the Brahmanical approach is more like create a ground level awareness of the need for change. And once that is there, along with that, if there is a top-down imposition also, then that is helpful. So for example, Singapore is ruthless about drugs. It's absolutely, the Middle East countries are also quite ruthless to some degree, but Singapore. But then whatever there is, there's also a lot of education about the harm of drugs. Then what happens is, so that's why I said that now there is normal education, but there is also education about values, education of spirituality. So that is what is most important. Without that, a top-down approach will not work.
I'll just conclude with this thought and then into the mindfulness. What I also feel probably from your explanation today is while these state acts are there, we using them to our advantage may get us justice or so-called justice in this world, but up there the calculations are different. Right? We have to ultimately face the act up there. You may, but that awareness only comes when you come to Krishna consciousness.
That's why what is that saying that, if a person has no fear of God, then you should have real fear of such a person.
If a person has no fear of God, you should have real fear of such person.
Yeah, because then for them there are no boundaries. They just think that if I can get away with it, then whatever I can do, anything I can do. So that fear of God is a good thing. Now we don't want only fear of God and nothing higher, but fear of God is an essential civilizing force in society. Yeah. Mad bhayad vati vato, that verse that I got from the Bhagavad also.
So any of our behavior, I'm telling this to myself, I just talk to all of you, is that after getting this lecture, there's a lot of, I'm going to get it again, because so many points that we touched upon, something came. Yeah, so so many points to touch upon. I think I'm going to start thinking of my actions and the reactions of the opposite person, and necessarily it will not be immediate change, but something that to work on. At the same time, uh, misuse of laws for my advantage. In whatever situation, I'm answerable somewhere else also. And at least coming to these classes, if my behavior doesn't change on that aspect, where we start really bad-mouthing our own people, our own families sometimes, our own children, parents, issues in the house coming out, all the way out, please understand that it's not going to help. It's not going to help. There is a saying, in earlier days, తెలుగులో చెప్తారు అది మూడు పిల్లల మధ్యలో ఇప్పుడు రావద్దు లాస్ట్ నువ్వే పిచ్చోడు అవుతావు. So it basically means that don't come between husband and wife, you will be a fool ultimately. You let them sort out those things. That's how our ancestors looked at it, and that's how it was sorted out also. So I think the formula still works if we keep Krishna in the center. Let's try to resolve our issues at our home. Don't bring it into into public domain. Even though we say we are devotees, even though we say that this satsang, still, take it in the right spirit. We are not part of the family, right? If it comes out, it's out. And then who will use it as what example, how they will take advantage of you, you are completely vulnerable and you can't complain about it. So we have to bring our best behavior. And forgive each other, like the way Prabhuji explained, forgive each other, keeping the good memories and trying to get away not remembering the bad memories.
Not replaying.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, Michael Karuja. We think right now, Narayan Prabhuji and he also has a question. Where come, Michael come.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for the very wonderful session, very insightful. Thank you so much for that. So Prabhuji, I had this question here, like when you said forgiveness, intentionally we should always forgive. Okay? So sometimes, we have this tendency that, it is very difficult to forgive someone who has hurt us. Okay, so then I keep saying, what I can do is, I will forgive him, when I have a tit for tat. Okay, so because that person has done something to me, let me do something in reverse, and then after that I'll forgive him. So is that a lower side of ourselves, or do we have to develop ourselves in such a way that, or do we have to develop a very strong shield around us, like it could be through spirituality or anything higher, that we are naturally able to forgive him? Okay, so this is my question. Intentionally,
Yeah. So sometimes we want to forgive, but first we want to get even, then we forgive. So like that, So get the score to the neutral, then we can do it. So then I think what happens is, rather than thinking of getting even, in every relationship, there has to be an awareness that actions have consequences. So in general, what we are doing is, if we are forgiving, we are saying this action will have no consequence. But the result of that can be that action can get aggravated. That action itself can be done more and more and more. And that should not be happening. So now, it's not so much hitting back at the other person, but creating deterrence in some way. That is important. Now, you see, India, Pakistan, China, China, there have been many wars in the past. Recently, there was a big Sindoor war. But apart from that, after the 1990s, there have been no major wars. And one major reason for that is that all three are nuclear powers. So it's what is that? They call it a MAD, mutually assured destruction. That I will destroy you, you will destroy me. So that deterrence has come, and that's why the war has not gone above a particular threshold. So I think in every relationship, there has to be some element of deterrence also. So now, that means if I do something wrong, there will be consequences of that. So forgiveness is not a one-way street by which One person keeps doing wrong, and other person keeps forgiving. And our point is not to make it easy for the other person's lower side to keep acting out. If that's happening, then that's not at all good. So I would say that wanting to get even and then forgive, that's not a healthy thing. But setting some boundaries and creating some deterrences. Deterrences means what? That this is one time. What is that saying? That if you cheat me once, shame on you. Cheat me twice, cheat me thrice, cheat me 4 times, then it's shame on me. That is like, why am I trusting you? I'm a foolish person over there. So cheating is a very big thing. But what I'm talking about is that there has to be some deterrence. So does forgiveness means that? So I would say that how the deterrence comes in, that has to be clearly communicated. And that's why some candid discussions are required, so that if this happens again, then I'm okay to forgive this, but it should not be happening again. Then the actions will have consequences eventually. Okay? Thank you.
Next question. Narayan? Okay, after that.
Hi Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranams. Thank you for this wonderful lecture. Prabhuji, I'm an associate professor. So my question is on behalf of teachers and mothers. Very often now we have single children, only one child, single child, and even in our college of girls, we are forced to forgive them, which is not correct. So I feel I'm doing a lot of injustice to my profession, and as in motherhood also, when we have a single child, we are forced to forgive because we don't have a choice. So how to deal with this anxiety that is building?
What do you mean by forced to forgive?
We are now in management where when we want to correct the action, it is considered as criticizing a person. Now the education field is such that the teachers are scared of the students. It's no longer the students are looking up at us. It is completely changed. So there is a burden of guilt in my mind, even as I was listening to you, that by forgiving these girls, I'm doing some injustice because they're going to face the music in the world they are doing. They come back to us and they come back to me and they say, ma'am, Shankari ma'am, you know what? This happened, I want to get a divorce, my in-laws are like, but they didn't correct this.
Yeah, okay.
This kind of inflexibility.
Yeah, I got the question.
So how do we deal with this where forgiveness itself is becoming a sense of guilt?
Yeah, right. So see, thank you. Very important question.
A lot of courage for asking.
Thank you. So thank you. So when we talk about forgiveness, sometimes the way the system is, if we have a single child, then whatever they do, that is the only child we have, so we keep forgiving. Or in the school educational system now, it's that you have to be very sensitive to the children. We should not demoralize self-esteem, so we cannot criticize them. Then we end up not disciplining them, and then they get in trouble with the world. So I think that is the leftist worldview and the leftist philosophy has permeated far and wide. And one of the areas that's permeated is in the education. So it's not so much come in the STEM fields, but in the humanities, what we call as arts, it's come quite a bit. So what happens is that let's put it this way, that when we want to express love, we want to express care, we want to express affection, there are multiple levels. First is we protect those whom we love from wrong actions. Now, how do we protect them from wrong actions? By education. By educating them, by cautioning them, by creating boundaries for them. Now, second is that we protect them from the consequences of wrong actions. That means if somehow if they're doing something wrong, then what do? We protect them. Say, if our child drives drunk, takes a car and drives drunk, and then the police catch them. The fine for that is very huge. The parents may go and say, this man, I'll take care, please overlook this. Or they cause some damage to someone. They make a scene because of whatever. Then we talk with the neighbors. We may seek forgiveness. Like the child is disciplined by the school, the parents may come and request the principal or the teacher, please. So now that is also an expression of love. Protecting our loved ones from the consequence of their actions. But at a particular time. So first is, they don't do the wrong action itself. Second is, if they do wrong, we protect them from the consequences. But the third is where we stop protecting them. Now, this is probably one of the most difficult ways of expressing love. That if you are not ready to learn, then if I am shielding you from the consequences of your actions, and that's you keep doing those actions again and again, then what will happen is you are becoming a worse person, the situation is becoming worse. So you have to pull the protection off. So in addiction, this is called, there are addicts and there are codependents. The codependents is, they keep covering up or making up, clearing up the mess of the addict. So I think that pulling off the plug, like stopping the protection, that is very difficult, but sometimes it has to be done. So what has happened in today's world, that expression of care, expression of love or affection, that has shifted by default from the first level to only the second level. And in one sense, all three are expressions of love. And there are different levels, but this is the most is the best, where a person is chastised and they are cautioned and they are stopped from doing wrong. Now, if they do wrong, then we protect them. But eventually, they have to face the music. Like you said, the parents or the society can protect them for some time. But eventually, life will catch up with them. Reality will catch up with them. So one of the implications of the principle of karma is that it's not just that we will be caught for our wrongdoings. It is that we will be caught by our wrongdoings. Caught for our wrongdoings means there is some external authority, I did something wrong, and that external authority will catch me and punish me. There is some truth to that. But caught by my wrongdoings means what? Each time I do wrong, that conditioning becomes stronger. And I'll keep doing that again and again and again. So a child may say, I'll smoke, I'll drink, and I won't get caught for it. I'm clever enough. You may not be caught for smoking or caught for drinking, but you will be caught by smoking and drinking. Because so that's why sometimes this third level, if we don't stop protecting, eventually we will also not be able to protect only, because the consequence will become so big. So society is that because of the leftist level, it's more at the second level right now. Let whatever happen. What do we do? I think there is some level of pushback happening in the West. In some parts of the world at least, there's a pushback against extreme leftist ideology in society. But in India, it's not. India, you could say, the rising of the Hindutva is more at a political level. We have again a comeback of the right, but still that has not permeated to other areas in life. Say in the movie culture, the right has come up a little bit now, where movies depicting nationalistic themes and Sanatan Dharma and positive ways are coming up. But in the educational front, it's not come up. So broadly, what do we do? And it's a big question. 3 things are possible. One is we work inside the system. The second is we work outside the system to pressure it. Third is we create a new system. So different devotees are trying different things. Work inside the system means we are a part of the education, but wherever there are possible, there are some like-minded people. Maybe there's a particular department where the head is in a particular way. They understand the importance of discipline. So we work inside the system. The other is outside the system means that we work to change the laws. Like a think tank, we change its policies. And third is we create a new system. That is where some devotees are working and trying to start Gurukul or start some educational system. So it is a difficult situation, but I think we have to try our best. And sometimes fighting for some principles means that we have to pay a price. But overall, it's like people may not appreciate it immediately, but they will appreciate it in the long run. And sometimes that long run, we have to wait for that. Okay, thank you.
Very many times I have felt that, Bhakti, very many times I have felt that I was in the shoes of Bhishma, to be honest with you. Because Bhishma's forgiveness gave rise to the Mahabharata war, I strongly feel. So I'm also like that. Sometimes I think even I may get a bed of arrows when I die, because as a teacher, I'm not able to condemn the wrong thing because it is not allowed by the society.
Yeah.
So it's an internal war that we are facing actually.
Yeah.
But, am I correct in my? I'm not sure. I've not read the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad-Gita to that extent to really understand. But I somehow feel Bhishma's forgiveness led to the Mahabharata war. I may be wrong.
Okay.
It's my perception.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. So I won't go into that part so much in detail. But the point is that sometimes we are in a system and we can't really change the system. So Krishna says, Sarvarambhai doshena dhumainavida ribhavritaha. That every endeavor is covered by fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. So sometimes we have to accept that this is a faulty system, so I have to be a part of that system. So now we don't want to be the fault increasing part of the faulty system. We can try to be as less involved in it as possible. We can try to be the best example rather than the worst example. Now, why Bhishma remained silent? It's a complex issue. But Bhishma it's not so much forgiveness. He was focused on the fact that I had taken a vow to protect the Kuru ruler. Whoever that may, however that may be, that he didn't focus on. So like when we do an action, our intent of the action, the content of the action, the effect of the action. All three need to be considered. So Bhishma focused only on the content. This is my vow and this is what I'll follow. Whatever is the effect, that is a secondary tertiary consideration. That's how it worked out. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I'd like to just put a small comment on that. That's okay. You can correct me also. As a teacher, you're trying to take responsibility of children, which is amazing, and actually you honestly come forward and telling this. It takes a lot of courage and honesty. I wish there are all teachers like you who are actually even thinking about it. So having said that, actually the whole responsibility of correcting children cannot be with one person sitting in a college. Okay? The correction also has to happen in the house. Parents have a big role to play, which they're not playing. And the parents are sending completely spoiled brats to your college, and you're standing there against the management who is more focused on fees and their own security than really educating the children. How much can you do? Right? It's already a broken system. I'd like to share an incident. This happened today, a few hours ago, and I was introspecting on that. And I'll share, we all were having lunch. And me and my wife were sitting on the table, and few other devotees were sitting on the table. And, my wife got up to get some more prasad. She just got it. There were a lot of people, so the seats were not available. So she said, just keep my seat. I said, obviously I'll keep your seat. Just you go and come. And as soon as she went, one other boy, who is like maybe 7-year-old boy, 7 or 8-year-old boy, he came with his plate and sat there. And his father was behind. And I didn't see his father. I just looked at the child and said, Beta, so your Mataji already hai yahan pe, ab kahin aur jaake baitho. I told this. And immediately, the father became so violent, violent as a word. I don't know what to say that. So angry. It said, idhar aao. इन लोगों को इतना भी डिसेंसी नहीं, बच्चों को कैसे टेबल देते हैं? What just happened? इन लोगों को, see the comment there, इन लोगों को, because I think his wife comes to the satsang or she's attached, but he's not. He's sitting in his house. He came there for the lunch, whatever it is. He doesn't know who we are, but he has the impression on the entire, devotional community. Maybe he's carrying that. I was trying to introspect what all just happened. So he just said to his child, who is 7-year-old, 8-year-old, that these people don't know how to respect a child. You get up, I find another place for you. And immediately I got up and said, Prabhu, it's not my seat. Somebody else is sitting there. I didn't tell it to my wife though. Somebody else. If you want, you can take my seat. I said, no, I don't need it. He just went like that with his child. And later again I went to him and I told, see, there was somebody else already sitting there. And that person told me to hold the seat. And obviously I have to hold the seat. Try to understand. He said, that's okay, that's okay. I tried my best to make sure that he doesn't carry a bad impression on devotees. But why I'm taking the example right now, Mataji, to your question is that to what extent the child's consciousness is spoiled? You just think about it. The child has got, if you start writing it down, the child has got a mindset now that he is more qualified to get the seat if any elder is sitting. Right? Any elder is sitting. He has qualification. And he has got an education from his father that he can afford to blanketly say anything strong on anybody. Right? In public. He can do that. Right? And if you start writing it down, the impression that the child has got through a single arrogant behavior of the parent, which he wanted to, I don't know why he did that. Sometimes people do that to make an impression on their wives or, or somebody else around. They just say it. But what happened to the child is he is completely miseducated, and that child comes to your college. What can you correct? You can't do anything. He's being educated in his home like that. Right? So it's a collective responsibility that we all hold. How we are grooming our own children. Are we teaching them how to respect? If I would have been there, I would have told, both my sons are here, you can sit down and eat. All elders are sitting on the chairs. If you want to sit, there's no chair. Either you can stand or you can sit down. What is wrong in sitting here? Now all of us are going to sit here down and only eat, right? Not everybody is going to get a chair. Right? But this satsang system is not there, and satsang is missing in the society today. And as a teacher, you being in a college, how much can you correct? So please don't carry that much guilt, more than what you can handle. That's all. So you can comment on what I just said. Please, sorry for including.
So it's like there are two extremes. One is that we don't take responsibility for what is in our control. The other is we take responsibility for what is not in our control. So, so both ways thing can go wrong. I think we have to find the balance. It's not always easy, but try your best. Yes.
So, Mama, can pass the mic to Roma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this amazing class. So I had a question regarding one of the points you mentioned, that if the person is trying to fight against the lower self, we can forgive them. But what if the person is pretending to fight against the lower self in expectation that they will be forgiven, and using that as an excuse not to improve? And what can be done? Like, we cannot forgive them because we know they'll do it again. And we cannot even put a strong justice punishment because we can see the potential that they can improve. But they are pretending to fight against it so that they can get away with the forgiveness. So what can be done in that situation?
Yeah. So if somebody is pretending to fight against their lower nature to avoid consequences, should we forgive them? Yeah, it's always like a tension between when we are trying to change. How much are we trying to change the substance and how much are we trying to change the appearance? It's like that, am I becoming a good person or am I improving my looks of being a good person? Now, to some extent, for many people,
Sorry.
yeah.
1 second. Yeah. That's what.
Yeah, thank you. So for many people, Hare Krishna, okay. So for many people, the appearance is more important than the substance. That I should not be thought of as a bad person. Whether I'm a bad person or not, that's not important. So now, to some extent, in some ways, that person has to recognize that substance without the substance, the appearance is like a building without a foundation. It will fall. Now, if they don't realize it, if they're not ready to realize it, then it's something which we will have to decide how much trust can we put in them. Like, because I can forgive you for a past, but when do I repose trust? How much trust do I because that is my choice, and that cannot be forced. So sometimes we may have to have some hard discussions. See what happens, and this is slightly important, that say if there's a discussion between two people and say A has done some mistake, or A has done something which appears like a mistake or a wrong decision, and now A gives a reason why I did this. So what happens is, if A's reason is not believable for B, then what happens is B comes up with another reason. And that another reason may actually worsen the relationship. Like when Maricha called out, "Hey Lakshman, hey Sita." So Lakshman said that no, Ram is not in danger. There is no danger for Ram. This is not Maricha's voice. This is Maricha's voice, not Ram's voice. And I need to be here because Ram has told me to protect you. Sita's concern was that Ram is in danger. Why not protect him? So I am here to protect you. Sita, because her concern was that Ram should be protected, she just, why is he not going? I am here for your safety. That reason was not convincing for Sita. And Sita came up with another reason. The other reason is what? That you have an evil eye on me. And that's why you are letting Ram stay in danger. So what happens is that in any relationship, if somebody is giving a reason for a particular action, and if that reason is not convincing for the other person, it's better to be candid. Especially the relationship is important. I can't accept this. You don't have to outright call the person a liar. You don't want to attack that person. But we have to express ourselves. Because if we do not, what happens is, then we'll start thinking, this is not the real reason, what is the real reason? And if overall we have a negative impression of that person, then what we think of as a real reason will be much more negative. And then the whole relationship will start going down. So sometimes it's important that it's like some hard discussions can prevent hard situations in the future. Now those hard discussions are not always easy, but they have to be had. So if the other person is saying, I'm changing, why are you not trusting me? Then that if we are feeling that you are just putting on a show like this, in gentle terms, but we have to tell. Because trust has to be earned. And sometimes if the other person's actions are not being trustworthy, they need to know, so that otherwise what happens is, we are not trusting them, but we are not telling them that. And they think that we are very unforgiving. So both ways, each person starts ascribing more negative motives to the other person, and the whole situation starts becoming worse. Okay?
One more small question. So before forgiving and even if we forgive and forget, so we withhold a little bit of trust. So what if that boundary of withholding the trust is seen as an intimidation or a sign of disrespect of the relationship? How to...
See, if you withhold trust, the other person sees this as an intimidation or not proximity in the relationship. I think it's a natural thing. So if we lend money to someone, and if we give money to someone and that person put in a bad investment and all the money was lost, and then we may not want to give our money to that person again. That's common sense. So it's like from both sides, maybe from that person also could not be so much expectation that you should be trusting me. And from our side, it's important that maybe in that particular area we don't trust that person. But that doesn't mean we can't trust them in any area. So it's like, I have a wound in this relationship in this particular area, but I respect you as an individual. I trust you in other areas. So that way I think it's that what I said, I don't disturb you, you don't disturb me. So I don't disturb you means what? That I don't withhold trust from you in all areas. Now, just because I made a bad investment doesn't mean that I'm a bad husband or a bad parent or whatever. There is a bad investment. So I don't withhold trust in all areas. So that's why I don't disturb you. But from the other person's perspective also, wounds take time to heal. They have to be also understanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think.
We'll take this one question and because Prabhuji has multiple classes today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay.
So, I have a doubt. In today's society, how do we identify who plays the role of a Brahmana and who plays the role of the Kshatriya in bringing out the higher self and suppressing the lower self? And subsequently, how do we ourselves identify, being imperfect, who is acting in a state of higher sense and who is in the lower sense?
Okay, it's a thoughtful question. So, who is a Brahmana and the Kshatriya in today's world? Well, generally, most of our personal relationships should be at a Brahmanical level. That means with our family, with our close friends, with our relatives. Most of the interactions are at the Brahmanical level. Now, if we are in an official managerial role in any larger collective, that's where it becomes like a Kshatriya role. So, depending on what is at stake in that particular role, we may have to take action accordingly. So, suppose, say, we are coordinating a wedding in the family, and then we tell somebody to get these particular items, and they forget to get it. Then we're not going to bring the force of the law on them. But at that time, this has to be done. If you don't get these items, then everything else gets blocked. Then we may have to take that service away from them and let somebody else do it. So that way, practically, in the world, things need to be done. And if somebody proves themselves to be not trustworthy, then that will have to have a consequence. So in that sense, Kshatriya, so justice doesn't mean always punishing. It's not like punishing means, giving some bad sentence. It could be withdrawing some privileges also from some person. That may also be required. So when I'm talking broadly about Kshatriyas, it refers to anybody who's playing an administrative role. So within ISKCON, this often becomes a challenge. That is, some devotee commits something wrong, does something wrong. So should we see that person is a devotee and forgive them? Or the fact that they did something wrong and that affected others? So what should we do at that time? It's not an easy thing to decide. So I'm one of the editors for Back to Godhead magazine, and we often get articles about how I came to Krishna consciousness. So we got one article of one person who was in South Africa in a jail, and in the jail he was introduced to Bhakti. And quite a nice story. So our policy generally, if from a particular area a story of, especially as a personal story comes, we try to connect with the local leader and we ask them about whether they know this person and this person, because we are going to, in one sense, promote that person. We are going to tell their story. So then when we wrote to the local leader, what we found was that this person, he had become a devotee in a jail, but he had gone into the jail because he had molested a woman. And that girl was the daughter of a prominent congregation devotee. So now can we publish that? Okay. He has become a devotee, but what he did was terrible. So then he was aspiring from a spiritual master for a long time in a jail, aspiring from a spiritual master. So spiritual master said that one chanting of the holy name forgives all sinful reaction. Okay, all sins. So they said that our point is, this is not a sin, it was a crime, isn't it? So at an individual level, nobody is stopping him from practicing bhakti. Nobody is going to say that because you did that to that devotee's daughter, we won't allow you to chant. But at a public level, we can't promote that person. So that's why, in that sense, there's a clear difference between the individual level. We give a person chance to manifest their higher self. But if somebody is in an official role, then they should not be promoted at an official level. Okay? Thank you.
Although the topic was deeply philosophical, it did not feel like a philosophical session at all, because this is a everyday phenomenon. It impacts everybody, every day, everywhere. And forgiving is very hard thing to do. Very hard. Especially when we are at the receiving end of whatever it is, sin, crime, all this jugglery of words doesn't appeal to us. When we are wrong and when, I don't know, dictionary doesn't help there. And I sometimes wonder why divorce was introduced only between a husband and a wife. At the same time, I'm very glad that no state on the planet thought that there should be divorce between parents and children, sister and brother, friends. I'm very glad that thought didn't cross anybody's mind, because divorces are happening in every relationship. And especially husband and wife. And there are some mistakes that those are very hard to forgive. And then you talked about individual, state. But there is this third thing there. I don't know what to call it. It's the world. It's just the world. I'm telling you, there was a case. There's a very recent case after the Gen AI revolution happened with Sam Altman, ChatGPT, and all that. And you know this. A boy was driven to commit suicide by Gen AI. In fact, 1 hour before he committed the suicide, kid asked, I think my parents will be devastated. He particularly said, my mom. And it said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's all over. You should just go ahead. And that we got to read that entire letter that the parents have written to both the judiciary system and Sam Altman, saying that you may think that you are just working on some technological thing, but you are impacting every living entity, every life here. And for us, our son is gone. So, I don't think we parents got any preparation time for all the technological advance that happened, Prabhuji. I tell you, after 2.5 decades spending my career on technology, we didn't get time. Facebook was the only thing that was there. Next thing I knew, it like we were bombarded, Prabhuji. When did that, what is that? Shorts, YouTube shorts, those Insta reels, when did it? As a person who is in the whirlwind of technology, I didn't know when that happened. And we didn't have time. And these kids took to it like anything. Now we have ChatGPTs of the world. God knows who they are. No, who can take my grievances against? Is it the individual? Is it the state? What is that damn thing? The third thing that I'm trying to talk about. Ethics. That's why there is a big push on ethics in Gen AI. We are working on Gen AI for most part. But I don't know who to forgive, who needs to be forgiven.
Okay.
We are in such a complicated
So there's a lot of points there. I don't know how much I can address, but I appreciate the sentiment and the intensity with which you are expressing it. It's a serious concern, and I think many of you, I think, you are openly expressing this, so I appreciate that. So I say 2-3 things. First is that forgiveness is difficult, there's no doubt about it, and that generally if there is a person to forgive, then at least we can decide whether I want to forgive this person or not. But when there is something abstract, then it becomes much more difficult. So as far as preparing for technology is concerned, yes, the way society has advanced in the last 2000 years, it advanced faster in the last, say, 20 years than the past 2000 years. Advanced, we could say change, whether it is advancement. Overall, it's open to question. But in the last 20 years, it advanced faster than 200 years. In the last 2 years, it has advanced faster than the past 20 years also. So now the problem is not just that technology has advanced, it is that how fast the technology is reshaping society. Some technological advancements or changes, they don't reshape society so much. So I think it's a challenge, it's a huge challenge. Now, having said that, life throughout history has been difficult. We may compare with Satyuga, and that's a different thing. But if you look at history in the previous, say, 200, 300, 400 years ago, there are constant wars. And there will be violence, and there will be killing, and In the Ramayana, one of the characteristics of Dashrath Maharaj, how glorious was his kingdom was, it was said that there was not a single soldier in his family who was, there was not a single soldier in his army who was not having another son in that family. That means that if this soldier is killed, they would have somebody to take care. And then not only that, they said when they would fight, they would not kill any soldier who did not have some other brother in the family. I don't know how they would know on the warfield whether they have a brother or not. But the principle was that life is very difficult, and sometimes a war means horrible things happen. So the nature of the mind is to catastrophize, think that things have never been as bad as they are. But life has been difficult in different ways. And in some ways, the way it works is, at the material level, a problem is there, we find a solution, but the solution creates its own problem. And then we find a solution to that problem, it creates another problem, and it creates another solution. Now, overall, through this phase, in some ways things become better, in some ways things become worse. So I would say that this world has always been dukkhalaya. So in that sense, we don't catastrophize the problem. I'm not minimizing the problem also, but the human spirit, the Atma is Avinashi. And in the human spirit has the capacity to rise above whatever challenges come up. Like say, if we say that nowadays so many people are so addicted to their phones. So now that's true. If somebody asks, if people ask me, why are so many kids addicted to their phones? My answer is, that's the wrong question to ask. So he says, when the phones are so addictive, why are all kids not constantly addicted to their phones? Now, if you consider the digital world, what it offers in terms of dopamine hits and attractive things is far more than what the real world offers. But why is everybody not addicted to it? Because, at the core of our being, there is a spiritual side which knows that this is not substantial. We long for something real. We long for some higher reality. So in that sense, the spiritual side is what will keep humanity alive. That all the technology that is there, the technology, it can promise many things, it can provide certain things, it can take away certain things. So exactly how it will move on, we can't say. And yes, the students today, the kids today are being bombarded in ways that no previous generation was bombarded. And that will have its effects. But still, ultimately, they're not just children, they're Atmas. And the Atma has that capacity to rise above it. Now, that doesn't mean that as society, we should just allow whatever is happening. How we, like you said, ethics, what ethics can be there, what ethics can be implemented. That is something which, because the technology has come at such a pace, we've not been able to implement that. But the human spirit, the soul itself is very strong. And one last point I would like to make is that it's just as the Ganga finds its way towards the ocean. So ultimately, each one of us, through whatever situation we are in, we find our way towards the ocean. There's one prominent atheist, he published his conversation with AI about the existence of God. Now what had happened was that there are many good arguments for the existence of God also logically, when the rationally using scientific evidence also. But in the mainstream academia, they have been sidelined. But there have been spiritually minded scientists also written a lot of papers. So that was not available in the mainstream media. But then AI has got the repository of everything. So this atheist is like a long conversation. And he was making arguments about how God does not exist, and AI was responding. And he published it with the intention of trying to show that how AI is biased against atheists. But the effect was that he was making logical arguments and AI was refuting all the logical arguments. So it ended up actually, so many people who read that, they said that, oh, there are so many arguments for the existence of God, we didn't even know that. So in that sense, there is no complete curse in this world and there is no complete blessing in this world. So AI in what ways it may in future facilitate spirituality. It is ultimately the spiritual instinct is there within the soul. And can it facilitate spirituality? It can. So let's not catastrophize, but at the same time, what can we do to prevent this? So that's what I think when I had done that talk in say Salesforce, I talked about this, that there is outer power which comes through technology, and there is inner power that comes through spirituality. So outer power means the power to have many choices. So technology can increase our choices enormously. But inner power is that among those choices to make good choices. So ideal situation is where we have both outer power and inner power. Now the development of outer power is something which is happening through technology and we can't stop that. But if you consider among these 4 quadrants, it's like the person, this is super effective. If a person has outer power and inner power, like today, if somebody can use technology and then they want to make good choices, they can really make very good choices. Now, the biggest, if somebody has inner power but no outer power, they will be under effective. Like if somebody doesn't use technology, then they will reach only a small number of people. They cannot reach anything. Now, if somebody has neither outer power nor outer power, they'll just be ineffective. They will not be able to do much. But the real danger is at this stage, if somebody has outer power but no inner power, then they can be destructive. So we need to help everyone to get to this quadrant 4. So technology is coming anyway. So if we share spirituality, not just in the sense of rules and rituals, but more in terms of raising people's consciousness so that they can see their long-term interests and make better choices, then that is the way ahead. So we can't stop the dissemination of outer power, but we can try to increase the dissemination, access to inner power. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki